It had been a hard winter in the Appalachian Mountains. The snow piled deeper and deeper. The mercury dropped. Rivers froze. People suffered. The Red Cross used helicopters to fly in supplies. One crew had been working day after day, long hours. The rescue team was tired and figured they'd head back to camp and get started again in the morning. Then they saw a little cabin submerged in the snow. There was a thin whisper of smoke rising from the chimney. Because of the trees, they had to land a mile away. They put overloaded packs on their backs and trudged through the waist-deep snow. They reached the cabin exhausted, panting and perspiring. They pounded on the door. A thin, gaunt mountain woman opened the door. The lead man sputtered, "We're from the Red Cross." She was silent for a moment, then said, "It's been a hard winter, Sonny. I don't think we can give anything this year." Jesus was watching people throw money into the bell-shaped brass openings on the temple money boxes. There were 13 money boxes scattered around the court of women at the temple. And they had these metal openings. Picture a brass bell. Picture the opening of a tuba or a baritone. All the money was metal, copper, silver, gold coins, no paper money. People did not just drop money into these metal containers. The Greek is very specific. They threw the coins into these metal receptacles. What would happen? Obviously, it would make a racket, a noise. And the larger the coins, the more coins, the louder the noise. If a wealthy person threw in lots of heavy coins, every head would turn to see what was happening, and they would be impressed by the giver. As Jesus was watching and listening, suddenly he got excited. Jesus gathered his disciples and made this pronouncement, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has thrown in more than anyone who's been throwing money in the treasury." Can you imagine how the disciples reacted? "What? I didn't hear anything," Peter said. Matthew, the tax collector, "Lord, don't take offense, but did you ever learn arithmetic?" Thomas, the realist, "Jesus, you always exaggerate to make a point. Sure, she gave all she had, but how can that be more than the others? Really, Lord." Simon, the zealot, "We should tear down this temple. The priests are corrupt. They steal from the poorest of the poor, and they line their pockets, and they're in bed with Rome." Nathaniel, "Master, the temple can't run on pennies. It takes tons of gold and silver to do God's work here. If it were not for the contributions of the wealthy, the temple would never have been built in the first place. And the daily costs are so high, they would have to shut down without their support." Andrew, "Lord, can't we give her some of our food or some money from the money bag so she can buy food?" Judas, who carried the money bag, "We can't give her money. Who knows what she'll do with it? She might just turn around and throw it in the offering again. Then we might not have enough to buy supper for ourselves." I believe Jesus would have agreed with Andrew. He would have given the widow some bread or had Judas get a denarius out of the money bag and give it to her. A denarius was a day's wage for a laborer and worth more than 100 times the coins that she put in. The coins that she threw in there were 2 Greek lepta. They weren't even Roman coins. The smallest, thinnest copper coins in circulation. The King James Version translates 2 mites, which make a farthing. By the way, you can still purchase a widow's mite. The cheapest you'll find is on Amazon for $28. However, if you want an authentic Greek lepta, it will cost you about $100. Talk about inflation. The clinking of those 2 little copper coins would have been so faint, no one would have ever heard or noticed it. But Jesus was impressed with such a gift. Jesus supported her generous gift to the work of the temple. Some people are negative about giving to religious institutions, but not Jesus. He praised the widow for her gift. Jesus valued institutional giving. At a church council meeting, the congregation's wealthiest member decided to share a little bit about his faith journey. "I'm a multimillionaire," he said, "and I attribute it all to the rich blessings of God in my life. I can still remember the turning point in my faith like it was yesterday. I had just earned my first $1, and I went to a youth meeting that night. The speaker was a missionary who told about his work. I knew that I only had a dollar bill and had to either give it all to God's work or give nothing at all. So at that moment, I decided to give everything I had to God. I believe that God blessed that decision, and that is why I am rich today." When he had finished and sat down, the finance chair leaned over and said, "Wonderful story. I dare you to do it again." The Lord notices what we give, even if it is a tiny amount. That is an encouragement when we don't have much to give. Jesus said that the widow gave more than everyone else who had thrown in that day. Why? Because she gave everything. Everyone else had put in from their surplus, but she gave all she had to live on. She was a generous giver. Jesus measured the givers not by how much they gave, but by how much they kept. When we all give, when we all pool our resources, we can do so much more good in our community and beyond. You are doing this in many different ways through the missions and ministries of this congregation, restoring water and power for a mother of 4 whose water had been shut off, and she showed me the electric bill that they were already going to turn off her electricity. Because of you, we were able to turn all that back on. And you've done that for others each week through our ministries. Doing the laundry, feeding, and providing counseling, dental and medical checkups for hundreds of people experiencing homelessness here in Sarasota. Providing bags of groceries for those who are hungry. Giving young mothers with little ones a place to live and food to eat. Brightening children's eyes when they open presents on Christmas morning because of your generosity, delivering meals to the homebound, comforting those who grieve, providing salaries and more for 3 Cuban pastors so that those families can eat and they can share with other families, teaching 35 orphans in Zimbabwe to develop micro businesses and support themselves so that you do not have to beg anymore, building houses out of shipping containers for those living in the ruins of their bombed-out houses in Ukraine. You do these good things and so many other wonderful things through your gifts, not to even mention the work through the United Methodist Church at large. The ministries and missions of First Church also point to another kind of giving that Jesus praised in his parable about the final judgment. It comes from Matthew chapter 25, beginning in verse 31. "Now when the Son of Man comes in his majesty and all his angels are with him, he will sit on his majestic throne. All the nations will be gathered in front of him. He will separate them from each other, just as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right side, but the goats he will put on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who will receive good things from my Father. Inherit the kingdom that was prepared for you before the world began. I was hungry, and you gave me food to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothes to wear. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me.'" Nearly all these actions would have cost people money in the first century. Welcoming a stranger would involve inviting a person into your home and feeding them for up to 3 days. Clothing was very expensive in Jesus' day because it took a great deal of labor to make a garment. That's why when Jesus was crucified, the soldiers cast lots for his robe. Taking care of a sick person would mean missing time from your own work, and spending resources on them. Visiting a person in prison usually meant taking food and drink to them because prisoners weren't necessarily fed by those who put them there. The average person had very little in Jesus' day. Most were subsistence farmers. So giving any resources to others might make one worry about providing for himself and his family. And all the actions Jesus mentioned also involved the person taking time to help another. How do the righteous respond to having helped the Lord in these ways? They said, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? When did we see you as a stranger and welcome you, or naked and give you clothes to wear? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" Then the king will reply to them, "I assure you that when you have done it to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you have done it for me." God credits us with giving to the Lord when we give to religious institutions like the poor widow who gave to God through the temple. God also values using our resources to directly help those in need. That is also giving to God. Jesus praises different kinds of generosity. In this parable, people will be judged based on whether they had compassion for the down and out and used their financial resources and time to help them. If they made a difference for others, then they made a difference for God. Jesus says we will be judged by our generosity or lack of it. The Lord says that when we are generous to those in need, we're being generous to God. We not only make a difference in their lives, we make a difference for God. Jesus fed the hungry, he ministered to the down and out, and he expected his followers to do the same. One of the shocking revelations to all the people in this parable was that those in need represented Jesus. A man named Michael Christensen spent some time with Mother Teresa in the slums of Calcutta. In his book, City Streets, City People, he tells of the burden of suffering that Mother Teresa witnessed each day. He reports that one day Mother Teresa rescued an abandoned baby from the gutters. The child's feet and hands had been gnawed by rats. At the end of that day, Mother Teresa asked Christensen if he had seen Jesus. Christensen still focused on the horror all around them. He admitted that he didn't see Jesus anywhere. Mother Teresa explained Jesus' teaching from our passage about taking care of the poor, the hungry, and the weak. And then she said quite simply, "You did it to me. You did it to me." Mother Teresa saw Jesus all around her every day. It is a privilege to serve a congregation that ministers in so many ways to the down and out. Friday, I walked into the kitchen in the fellowship hall. Peggy Height was there sorting the cans of food for the Thanksgiving boxes for our veterans in need in our community. Thank you to all our veterans. And thank you to those who gave to help the veterans, and to those of you who will give your time to put those boxes together and to load them on the truck. We give our time and money to help others. Barbara Brown Taylor tells about a single lady in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. She made the most of her meager income. Her name is Osceola McCarty. Ms. McCarty is a laundress, an elderly African-American woman who never married. She dropped out of school when she was in the 6th grade to begin a lifetime of washing clothes. That was the year her maiden aunt came out of the hospital, unable to walk, and moved in with her family. 12-year-old McCarty left school to help her aunt and help her mother and grandmother in the laundry business. When her aunt recovered a year later, McCarty thought she was too far behind to return to school. "I was too big," she said, "so I kept on working." For the next 75 years, that is what she did, says Taylor, scrubbing the dark clothes on a washboard and boiling the whites in a big black pot in her backyard before hanging them all out to dry. Her day started when the sun came up and it ended when the sun went down. But then when she was 87, Osceola McCarty did something that caught the imagination of the people of Hattiesburg. She gave $150,000, all her life savings, to the University of Southern Mississippi for black scholarships. Reporters and photographers were crawling all over her. Local business people pledged to match her gift. The young woman who was awarded the first McCarty scholarship all but adopted her. McCarty said the one question that she was asked more than any other was why she didn't spend the money on herself. "I am spending it on myself," she said with a smile. McCarty gave like the widow in the story. She gave like the righteous in Jesus' parable. She gave to make a difference in the lives of young African Americans who did not have the means to pay for a college education. Poor as she was, she made a difference for God. We make a difference for God by being generous to those in need, either directly in person or through the church or other charitable organizations. Thank you for giving to make a difference in the lives of those in need and for making a difference for God. Amen.